welcome back to Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig, and today I'm passing time with half of one of my favorite duos to ever exist. You might know him from the Tuck and Rolls podcast. Please welcome Ryan. Hello.
The better half, right? I'm the good half.
Yeah.
And the former Tuck and Rolls podcast, rest in peace. Rest in podcast peace.
Rest in podcast peace.
Pleasure to be here, Craig. So excited. I don't know if you want to let your listeners know how the sausage gets made. But it is June 2nd, so I assume I will be the first guest of Pride Month. And it's about time you got a straight cis man on here to talk about Pride, because I've got some opinions.
Oh, this is already...
And my opinions are, it's awesome, it's cool, good. I'm happy Pride Month. Those are my opinions. Moving on.
Yeah, it is Pride Month. I spent yesterday...
Couldn't get any gay friends for June, huh?
No.
Fresh out?
No, the gays are annoying. No, just kidding. I love them. I actually spent... I did record a couple podcasts yesterday with some queer members of the community, so... Yes.
You're pushing me to July is what you're saying.
I'm pushing
Probably for the best.
I'm pushing you to October.
October? It would take that much editing.
But I was going to say, I spent most of yesterday a little hungover, but I was actually on Instagram, and any company that posted, like, Happy Pride, there was always, like, on Instagram, people were obviously saying, oh, what does this have to do with anything?
Yeah, garbage trash folks on the internet, nothing new.
So I just commented on these different companies and just like gave heart emojis, and then I was like, getting all these notifications, including from Calgary Zoo, Drumheller, Disney. Like, everybody was liking it because of, like, there's so much hate going on. So fuck them all.
People put way too much effort into hating shit. Like, it's just like wild.
Yeah.
People are angry.
Drumheller posted, the Royal Tyrrell Museum posted about it, and they put like Allosaurus.
Those comments. It's a baseball cap, glasses, goatee, in-car selfie, profile pic. Oh, what, the dinosaurs gotta be gay now? Like, guaranteed that was on there.
That 100%. They're like, dinosaurs weren't gay? First of all, you don't know dinosaurs weren't gay.
Boy.
Some of them...
Yeah, prove it. First of all, prove it.
Some of them were pretty outrageous looking, so I think that's just... Don't be stupid, people.
Wait, so what are we actually talking about? If not my love of Pride Month?
We're catching up, but I think what made the most sense for us to chat about is our love of movies, but also the love of cinemas.
Yeah,
like going to the theater.
Your track record for guests is like people that are like smart and good and interesting, and then I was like, I'm not sure if I'm the right person for your show. No. On my show, I mostly just make dumb dick and fart jokes. And I was scrolling through my past listens of Passing Time with Craig, and I was like, we got somebody who knows a lot about dinosaurs. We got local business owners. We have activists. You had your brother, who I'm a big fan of. More than you, frankly, if we're being honest.
That's fair.
The rankings go back and forth. He's in the lead right now. We'll see. And then I was like, I like movies. Movies are cool.
Movies are cool, and I love movies so much. I love talking to people about movies, and that's why I wanted to talk with you. And I figured it actually makes sense. Yes, it is Pride Month, and we'll talk a lot about Pride during this month, I'm sure. But it is also summer blockbuster. Like,
yeah, they're popping off. We've already got Furiosa, which kind of I would say would be the one that's sort of kicking off the season. Furiosa.
I think so, because I think. I literally just got back from seeing The Fall Guy, which...
Loved it. I liked it.
Super fun. Absolutely loved it. Thought it was fantastic. But that was kind of like... There's those movies that they're like, well, we're not sure how good they're going to do, so we're going to kind of put them in this, like... There's this post-Valentine's Day, pre-summer blockbuster, and you can still make some decent money, and those are the films that are just fun. But, I would say Furiosa is probably it.
There's only so many months in the year, right? And these movies don't want to compete with each other. But if they're quote unquote a big film, the production companies want 4 to 5 weeks of them dominating the box office, right? So you have to try to pick and choose your battles. Like, oh, poor Sony had to move Craven all the way to December to quote, what did they say? Quote, so that you can spend all Christmas season enjoying it with your family, I think is the bullshit that they said, when really they just were like, Oh, another one of our Sony Spider-Man ripoff pieces of shit. Better bounce this around as best we can.
Yeah, Madam Web. Wow.
Oh, Madam Web made Morbius look good. Like after watching Madam Web, I was like, I think I was too harsh on Morbius.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, it was. I won't lie. I saw Madam Web very, very stoned.
Probably better, though. I saw it sober, and that was a mistake.
I couldn't stop laughing at moments when I shouldn't have been laughing, but...
Now, the craziest thing, I don't know if you're aware of this, but what's her name?
Dakota Johnson?
Fired her whole team after that movie.
I saw that.
Like, legitimately. And some of the press stuff, there was sort of an implication that she maybe was pitched on it being like, oh, you're in the Marvel universe. It's a Marvel movie. And she doesn't really know a lot about that. And she was like, okay, sure. And then after realizing, no, it isn't, and what the fuck, yeah, she like fired her agent and her manager and stuff, which is like, I also would fire my team if my team put me in that.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
She's literally come out and said, like, and while doing press for the movie, like, the movie wasn't even out yet. It's like coming out that weekend, and she's just like, this is not the movie that I read the script for.
Well, as if there was an actual script before they started filming that. Good movie, though. You mentioned The Fall Guy. You saw it today.
Yeah.
I saw it just a week or two ago. I was really excited for it because, one, Ryan Gosling, maybe one of the most charming leading men of all time. Like, the guy has chemistry with a broom. Like, it's wild. And I think he's really found a good spot for himself as sort of a... I know The Gray Man didn't do good, and it's sort of kind of middle of the road sort of action movie. It's pretty cliched. It's nothing new. But I thought that he was quite good in it. And obviously big Kennergy. Everybody loves that. But like he's found a good spot for himself. And I thought this movie was really showcasing that really well. And also, like you and I, we love movies. I love the stunt community. I'm like a huge proponent of like and this is what's the director? David, how do I say his last name?
Leitch?
Yeah, and he's one of the guys from like the John Wick thing. Like he's one of the people that popped that off, right? Who started as a stunt guy and has now come up into making movies, and this is a stunt guy making a movie about movies about stunt guys.
Yeah.
And that whole sort of fourth wall thing I loved. So I loved watching The Fall Guy. The movie itself is fine. Fun little sort of rom-com aspect, action, whatever. Lots of funny moments. But the stuff I loved the most was like the actual stunt guy stuff. Like I was so excited. Very minor spoiler here, but very early in the movie, he's not working for a long time and he's got really long hair and a long beard. And I had this conversation with my wife who was like, oh, because he's like depressed and whatever. And I was like, no, every stunt person, when they're not working, stops shaving and stops cutting their hair because then when they get the job, their hair can be cut and trimmed to the length that people want it to be. And I was like, that's such an inside baseball thing to do that doesn't really matter. But they were like, no, obviously he should. And so the whole movie was stuff like that. And I loved it.
Yeah, there's so much nice references to movies and movie making that unless you are in the industry or a big fan of it, you don't understand those little moments. And I just thought it was great.
But the great thing is if you don't know any of that stuff, still a perfectly fun movie. Very, very good time.
Yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and it's one of those ones very happy I saw it in the theaters because it is just big action explosions.
See, here's where I think we're going to get into a little bit of trouble. I think you brought me on thinking this guy loves movies. He loves to go to the movie theater. He's going to be pro movie theater. I actually am sort of indifferent about the movie theater experience. I think I used to be pro movie theater, but now I'm so anti other people that I maybe am not pro movie theater because a good movie going experience, yes, is wonderful, is untouched. But too many times the movie going experience is not good because most people suck. Yeah. Have you met people, Craig? I hate them.
I hear you, and I'm very lucky because people can tell with my work schedule, I don't have to do anything till 6 p.m. at night.
You're a night owl.
I'm a night owl. I don't have anything during the day. So I get to go see the movies. The matinee, first thing, nobody else is there. It's usually me and like 4 old people in the theater, and it's fantastic. Yet they still buy the tickets the seats as close to me as possible, and so then I usually just go and sit wherever.
To leech off your youthful exuberance, trying to just absorb some of that for themselves.
Yeah, and I love going to the movies for that whole experience, the cinema. But I am definitely a fan of, you don't need to see every single type of movie in the theater. There's some great dramatic movies that there's no point seeing on the big screen. It doesn't change anything.
Yeah, that's fair. I think where it really hits the most is action films, where the set pieces really do look more impressive on a really huge screen. And honestly, like comedies with a crowd sometimes hit a little bit different, But I find myself going less and less. And you shared with me a delightful little kind of short documentary on CBC Gem that I have now forgot the name of.
Magic Hours.
Something. Right, yeah, and it was about small-town Alberta cinemas, and I didn't mention this to you at the time because I figured I'd save it to here, but parts of my family are up from a very small town, northern Alberta, like 2,000 people manning Alberta. My great-aunt and uncle used to own and operate a theater in that town, the Aurora, which is still, as far as I know, operated by somebody else now. But again, the entire time it was like, that's where I first saw Starship Troopers, shout out, in the theater in Aurora, yeah.
Starship Troopers.
It was always a struggle because the thing is and I see the same impact with all these small cinema owners in these small towns, is like, if you think about how hard it is to keep a building like that open and operating, and just you have a small number of possible customers. If your town only has 2,000 people in it, it's not like you're showing different movies every night, and even if all 2,000 of those people come see the movie, they're not coming back next weekend for the same movie. So it's such a tricky business to keep afloat and to keep running. But it was so wonderful to watch that and just see people that were just like so passionate about the movies.
Yeah, it was such a great little documentary. I'm going to have the director, Levi, he's actually going to come on the podcast at one point and chat about it, which was great. Yeah, it's super fun. There's
big shoes to fill after I've been on.
I know.
Sure,
I know.
If you want to bring them on, sure.
I figure this is probably going to be the last episode. It's just go.
Go out on top. Makes sense.
Yeah, I'll still tell Tuck that we're recording a podcast.
He's never going to do it. He's going to keep scheduling it and forgetting. So you can just schedule it ad infinitum, and he's never going to show up.
That's perfect. I was going to say there is 2 small theaters in Calgary. There's the Globe Cinema, which has done pretty well for itself, been around for quite a while. They've got 2 actual screens. They usually have Calgary Underground Film Festival there. They have International Film Fest there.
Is that their strategy then? They try to show independent films that aren't showing at the Cineplex?
Yeah. So those are the ones you want to go see, and they're fantastic. Or they'll have like cool movie nights with like cult classics. And then there's another theater that's
like you're going to go see the Rocky Horror and throw your spoons in the room or whatever it is.
Toast and stuff.
Hi, Mark.
And so the other one in Calgary is called the Plaza, and it's in Kensington. And they actually last month had a room viewing with Greg was here for it.
Amazing.
But it sold it, like they sold it during COVID because obviously theaters weren't allowed to be open and already tough enough. But their strategy when they reopened, they got brand new owners, is it's a very small lobby. It's one theater, but they like one screen, and they have a bar, and now they've got like an outside like cafe. So they're open all day long where you can just go get alcohol or coffee or food to kind of counteract the cost when no one's coming to see that 2:00 showing of Challengers.
Sure. Yeah. So the theater's there, and they're like, there might be a few people in there, and we have this staff anyways. What can we do to try to make a little more money? Yeah, that's a good idea. It's good that they have the strategy of the independent films. Like I remember going to the Garneau in Edmonton to see a couple of things, including the worst movie I've ever seen in my life, which I think this is now, I'm fucking old, so this is probably 20 years ago.
Okay.
I think it was called The Russian Ark, And the whole thing was one shot, and it essentially was a Russian movie that was basically an advertisement for some museum in Russia. It was going through the museum, and different characters from different ages and stuff were like coming out, and that's all I remember. But I remember that I went with a girl who I was interested in and was like, what if we go see this movie? And I was like, sure. And I was like, what the fuck was this? But hey, thanks, Carnell, for showing that.
Yeah.
The tricky thing is that makes sense in a city. Okay, we're not going to show Avatar 3, The Seed Bearer, or whatever the fuck. We are going to show this weird Russian art film, because if people want to see it, it's the only place they can see it. If you're that small town, if you're the Stettler movie theater, you're obviously not showing art films, because the folks in Stettler do not want to fuck with that. Guaranteed. They do want Fast and Furious, but of the 2,000 people in the town, how many of them are going to go see it? And they're only going to go see it once. So it's like, it's almost an impossible business, right? Yeah.
It's very difficult. Anything in this entertainment realm is really tough. Like, I have people requesting themed, like I usually do 1 or 2 theme trivias a month, and you got your standards, you got Friends, The Office, this like classic Simpsons, Marvel, Star Wars, Disney. You have those ones that have the following. People will come to it. I could do it every single month. I have enough questions that I could do an Office trivia every single month. But yes, I could go after other markets. Like, I have people, this one girl who just like, please do a Real Housewives trivia. And I'm like, but I need to make sure that, like you were saying, you need to have all the people to come to, and you need all the people to come to the theater. So I need all the Calgary folks who are into Real Housewives to be free and available to come to my Real Housewives trivia that night.
Also, I'm sure there's a lot of Real Housewives fans but what's the crossover of Real Housewives fans and fans that want to go to a brewery and do trivia night, right? It's not necessary. I think that the there's a much higher amount of crossover for Office or like Simpsons for sure, Star Wars. Like, you're telling me your classic Star Wars dork doesn't love going to a brewery and drinking beer? Sure, Housewives fans do, but I think it's also maybe a lot of again, this is painting with a broad brush, but probably more ladies that like going out for a nice cocktail and not hanging out at a brewery doing trivia, right?
The problem is, and I see it when I have people who come to Friends or Office or Schitt's Creek, specifically those ones, you have the people who are diehards and know everything. They own Friends, Trivial Pursuit, and The Office, all the different board games, and they actually know their stuff, versus the people who discovered it or watched it 1,000 times during COVID, but just on the background, and then they don't know the answers.
Oh, I love Parks and Rec. I watch it all the time, but they don't know anything.
Yes, yeah. So
you start talking about cones of Dunshire, and they're just glazed over.
Yeah, like, and I'll even ask,
humble farmer.
I'll even ask like very simple questions, and people won't get it. And it was the same when I did the Taylor Swift trivia night. There was all these people who were like, I listen to Taylor Swift music, and I went some deep cuts of like who she was growing up, and there were people who absolutely knew it. And like, I think the top score was 35 out of 40, and last place was like 9.
Sure. And I mean, look, as long as they showed up and they had fun, that's still great. But like, I bet you if they got 9 and were like, we didn't know it was going to be like this, they might not come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'd like to think that I'm a good person for trivia about things that I know about, but like, I like Taylor Swift just fine, and I enjoy a lot of her music and stuff, but I think I would probably get, 8 out of 40 on the Taylor Swift trivia. It's just not information that I got up there. When we talk Marvel trivia, okay, call me. I'm your guy, obviously.
Yeah, and that's just it. It's always so tough when it comes to the theme trivias, and making sure that people are like available, and I know that there's at least 50 people in this city who knows this stuff, but are they free to come to this trivia night? And then that's a whole thing too. Now,
the good thing there is that really, you'll tell me how wrong I am, but you're sustaining your business is yourself. You're sustaining yourself there. So it's a lot more flexible and a little easier. When we're talking about the theater industry as a whole, it's a lot more moving pieces and a lot more people. And I think the problem that the theater industry is encountering, like, where they're saying, well, are movie theaters failing? We're not getting enough. the movies cost too much, we're not making the budget, we can't afford to stay open or whatever. Small town niche movie theaters aside, it's a problem for regular full-size Cineplexes and whatnot too, or Cineplex is a brand now. What's the term I'm thinking? Multiplexes,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
I think the real problem, and let me tell you, you might not have heard about this. Craig, do you know about capitalism? Have you heard about capitalism?
No, this is news to me.
Because the problem, not just with movies and the movie industry, but literally every industry, is that the folks producing and working in and trying to enjoy the fruits of that labor are getting squashed under the boots of the billionaires that continue to take more and more and more out of it. Is the movie industry less successful? No, arguably it's more successful than it ever has been. But if you look at the money produced in the industry of making films, way more of it, and this is pretty much every industry, sadly, way more of it is going to the top than anywhere else. So all the people in the middle and all the people at the bottom are struggling to do anything, right? Yeah. Reminds me of at the Oscars this year, and I cannot remember the gentleman's name for the life of me or what movie he was involved with, but he won an award, and what he said was like, how about instead of making another $300 million movie, you make 30 more $10 million movies?
Yeah,
like,
I remember that.
Nailed it. That's exactly like, I love a big action blockbuster as much as the next guy, for sure. Like, but that's all that gets made anymore, and it's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of movies. Like, I think that's why I was really into your guys' podcast, because you guys just love movies, and you talked about
yeah.
and you talked about a variety of movies. Like, I love the big, epic Marvel Cinematic Universe films with all the action and the CGI and the craziness, and they're just good for a 2-hour film. And then I love those like very serious dramatic movies, and I love a kooky horror movie, and I love animated films. Like, just give me anything.
Yeah,
as long as it's good.
The production companies are like, well, if we're going to make a movie, we want to make the most money possible. We need to make every movie that we put in theaters across the globe needs to make $1 billion. And it's like, that never used to be the case. You used to make a $10, $15, $20 movie, and if it made $50 million, $60 million, sick, great, that's a profit. That's business, right? And think how many people got employed, how many creative people got to flex their creative muscles and then go on to do bigger, better things, you know? But now they're like, well, we're making a movie for a Fall Guy, unfortunately, bombed. Furiosa, unfortunately, is bombing.
Yeah.
And they're making 100, and now those are two what I consider good movies. Great. Furiosa, great. We'll get to it, but like, great. Wait, hey, I'll tell you what we're going to get to on your podcast, and we are going to get to it. Sorry,
it's great. I barely have to do anything.
Yeah, just look. I'm steering the car now.
I'm going to go to the bathroom. You keep chatting.
Yeah, they're making $160 movies, and they're spending $100 million in marketing, and they're painting themselves into a corner because if they don't make $400-500 million worldwide, it's a failure. But it doesn't have to be that way. Like, there's other options, and I like to see these movies, and I think it's good to take swings, but they're not taking swings on anything small. They're basically saying we're not going to risk. They'd rather risk losing $300 million than risk losing $10 million, and I don't think it makes any sense to me. But it's because of the money, right? Yeah. Why would we put effort into only making $20 million if we can make $200 million? It's like, well, that's not really, like, money's still money. And you're not, you know?
Well, I mean, there's, just because I've been reading a lot about it lately, but a great example, and you were talking about how, you know, Craven's been pushed to December. But there's a great example of a movie that came out Christmas time, which you wouldn't think this made sense, and it's spawned this major franchise, and it was just, you know, we'll see how it goes. Scream was released in December 1996. Like,
you realize it was a December movie.
Yeah, and
it doesn't really make sense. You'd think October for a slasher.
No, and so here comes this movie that is obviously they had some star power. Like Courtney Cox was like 2 years into Friends.
Sure.
Nev Campbell, you know, Party of Five is kind of a big deal at this point. And then this movie just blew up, and now is we're getting...
I don't remember the specific advertising when Scream came out, but I got it. They probably were pushing Drew Barrymore as well, right?
Yes, yeah, and Drew Barrymore was supposed to be the lead, and then all of a sudden, that's crazy,
which is fun, but like, so yeah, they had some star power,
and then, but it was like, you know, the money that was put behind that was not as amazing.
I think the budget was on the first Scream $25 million,
maybe
tops.
Yeah, like I'm thinking because you also think about too, like there's Sydney's house. I mean, there's the opening kill. Then there's the house party, and then there's the school,
house, yeah,
right,
high school, yeah.
And I think they shot it within like 28 days or something.
Minimal outdoor shots,
yeah,
like a couple town center stuff, but like pretty minimal.
And then nothing major like CGI special effects. There was none of that. So the biggest things you're probably paying for is, I bet you at that point, was probably Courtney Cox. Yeah, and Drew Barrymore.
Or maybe Drew Barrymore. Yeah. Absolutely, great point. And like those movies, like if you look at like Alex Garland's new movie Civil War, which I absolutely loved. I don't know what the budget was, to be honest. I didn't look it up. I suspect sub $100 million, which still way more than Scream, but like less than a lot of movies these days. And it has some stars. Like it's got a bit of star power. Like it's got Kirsten Dunst, who's like she's not nobody.
Yeah.
And like Alex Garland himself is like I wouldn't say a household name because I'm just like a film dork. So like I'm a little bit more into it. But as far as A24 films go, this is probably like their biggest one. And it was a wonderful movie, and it was shot great, and it looked amazing. And they were able to do that all for a reasonable budget. And I think that they could have gone bigger, right? I'm sure at some point, if it wasn't A24, if this was a Sony movie, they would have said, we need a bigger set piece. We need more explosions and more fighting and whatever, which isn't really the point of the movie. It just adds to the budget, right? So I think there's a lot to be said about this. Is not only a problem with like it's the producers being like, this is what we think is going to sell and this is what we want to see more of, and the filmmakers, some filmmakers having ideas for smaller things but having to get it made by making it a bigger thing, giving the producers what they want. And
that's usually how it goes. Or it's like, okay, well we'll give you this money to make this film, but first you got to make this Marvel film.
Oh, that happens all the time.
And then you can go make... Then go ahead, Chris Hemsworth. You can go make this small indie film and whatever.
Okay, speaking of Hemsworth, did you also saw Furiosa?
I haven't seen it yet.
Seen it yet? No. Okay. So I have seen Furiosa. It is not doing well. I think the combo of factors is, first and foremost... dudes are the worst.
Yes.
Dudes on the internet. Oh, female lead, woke. It's a Mad Max movie. You don't even get to see Mad Max. You're trying to replace men. Just like everybody sucks so bad and I hate them. And I think then maybe there's like a little bit of the economy not doing so hot in North America. I mean, if you're a rich person, doing great. The like, I'm sure if you look at like the stock market, oh yeah, things are up and whatever, but all that shit is meaningless to regular people like you and me, because we're not making millions of dollars in that shit. The economy's great, but like I said, it's great for the people that have all the money. Everybody else is like, how much for a Big Mac? Like, what the fuck? You know? So you gotta pick your battles, right? And Dune 2 did quite well. And what else came out earlier this year that did pretty well? There was another one that now I'm blanking on. So it's not as if no movies that are coming out this year are doing well, but I think there's just not enough money in the movie-going community to sustain multiple back-to-back big releases, right? Like, and summer's coming up. You've got some Deadpool and Wolverine. You've got a couple other things like big movies coming up. People might be picking their battles, right? Whereas like something like Fall Guy and Furiosa, they're like, oh, that's fun and whatever, but like, can't afford that. That's $18 I don't have, right? So I think that's a factor. And then, you know, the cancel culture woke mob fucking backwards hat idiots, right?
Yeah.
Because I went and saw Furiosa, loved it. Now here's the thing. I would argue that Fury Road is one of the best movies ever made. It's in my top 5, no question. Sometimes it's top 1. If anybody's listened to me on my podcast, you know that like trying to get me to tell you my favorite movie is like pulling teeth. It's very difficult. It feels like a hard thing to do, but it's up there. And if anybody told me Fury Road's the best movie of all time, I'd go, oh, dope. Like, no argument. I get it, right? Walking out of Fury Road, though, was like, that was unlike anything I've ever seen before. So knowing that going into Furiosa, you know you can't get that same feeling again. So my expectations were, if this is anywhere close to as good as Fury Road, that's a huge success. And in my opinion, it's nearly almost as good. Like, you miss out on that's unlike anything I've seen before. But what you do get instead was, and I thought this was really cool, of so many scenes that if you describe the scene, you're saying, basically they did a 10-minute scene where they're fighting on a truck, the same as they did a 10-minute scene where they're fighting on a truck in Fury Road. But they did it in such a different and cool way that I was still like, holy shit, wow.
Yeah.
And that's almost harder to do than... To give me the same thing different enough that it still blows me away, I think is harder to do than give me a different thing entirely, right? So, like, nothing but good things to say. Go see it, spend the money. Like, everybody's... Hemsworth, my friend that I went with said, she was like, I think Hemsworth deserves an award for this.
Wow.
Like, he is just like a weird fucking guy, and he's making a lot of choices, and he's doing so much monologuing, like... arguably, he has more lines than the rest of the Mad Max series combined. Talking like 4 other movies, he's got more dialogue because they're not. I was listening to the Blank Check podcast with Griffin Newman, and they were talking about this, and what they said was George Miller makes the world's loudest silent films. And
like
so
that.
true. Like, if you think about the dialogue in Fury Road and any of the other Mad Max films, it's very minimal, and that's intentional. George Miller basically doesn't like dialogue. He thinks it's a waste of time. But in this movie, Hemsworth is playing like this weirdo fucking antagonist that's like going off on these monologues and he's got a weird little voice, and like it fucking rips. It's so cool.
Yeah. While you were talking, I wanted to look up because I was like, what has come out this year? So I'm on Box Office Mojo. These are the biggest movies so far of 2024, like box office worldwide. So we have Dune Part 2.
Yeah.
Number 2, which I'm like already forgot it's happened, and I will. It's Godzilla Godzilla X Kong.
Hey, Godzilla X Kong is 2?
That's number 2.
That was one that I was like 100%. Like, I've seen all those movies. They're fun enough. They're fine. I put it in. I'll watch this when it hits streaming. They give the monkey a robot glove. I'm gonna watch it, but I cannot believe it's number 2 at the box office.
Number 2, and I will say I watched the first Godzilla with Bryan Cranston. I watched Kong Skull Island. Really like Kong Skull Island.
Kong Skull Island is the best one by far.
I think it's fantastic. Try to watch some of the other ones, and I'm just like, this is getting like, how are humans still alive? This is stupid. But
the Millie Bobby Brown one is pretty bad.
But the Monarch TV show, loved it.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't want you to get mad at me. Please don't yell at me. I'm very sensitive. I watched like 3/4 of it and then just kind of forgot and stopped watching. Like, I watched to the point where they're like finally like, oh shit, Godzilla's here.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of didn't go back to it, and I have forgot until just right now.
That's fair. I really liked it because it was focused more on the humans, and I found that very interesting. And then they didn't do too much crazy big
monster stuff
where, again, it's becoming like, how are people still alive? Like, so I find it interesting. Number 3, Kung Fu Panda 4.
Oh, see, I don't have kids or anything in my household or even in like my circle, so like the cartoons are usually a miss for me.
So here's what's interesting. So this is currently, as of, I don't know if they've updated for this weekend. So like I said, number 1, Dune Part 2. Worldwide, it's made over $700 million. Makes sense. Godzilla is next with just over 500 million.
Significant drop, a $200 million drop.
Kung Fu Panda 4 is, what is that? 27 million less than Godzilla.
Okay.
And then number 4, which this baffles me because it's so brand new. Currently, number 4, down to at 337 million, is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Oh yeah. So no, that's another one where I really love the series, and definitely I was like, oh, 100% watch that when it hits home. But like I wasn't thinking about going to the theater, but like that is one where the whole reason to go see those movies is to just be in awe of how good the visual effects artists are at what they're doing. Like those monkeys look fucking amazing. Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah. So, but like, wow. And then number 5 is actually, and I already forgot about that. But the fact that number 5 has been out a lot longer than Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is Ghostbusters.
Hey, that's still on. Oh yeah, I forgot. I thought that came out. That's on digital now.
Yes,
I watched that on digital, and it was exactly as mediocre as I expected it to be. You watch that?
I did watch it. I liked it better than
That ghost pulled a honeypot on that girl. Classic honeypot, new twist, ghost honeypot.
I liked it better than Afterlife.
Really? I would say the opposite.
But only because I felt Afterlife was too kid friendly.
Yeah, Afterlife was like 95% nostalgia.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, this would have been really cool if I had kids to share this movie with, but I didn't, so I was like, this is weird. This movie's supposed to be for me, but it's not.
Every time I've watched one of the quote-unquote new Ghostbusters, the Kristen Wiig one, and then these 2 newer ones, I'm just like, oh, that was fine. Probably should have just watched Ghostbusters instead, because Ghostbusters fucking rips. It's still good.
But so number 1, over 700 million, was Doom Part 2. Number 5, Ghostbusters, which is already on digital, just over 200 million.
Big gap.
That is a huge gap for the top 5 films of this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we go Bob Marley, One Love, then The Fall Guy.
How much do you want to bet? Does Box Office Mojo have budgets? Because the thing is about Dune 2, surprisingly, for how fucking good that movie looks, like that movie's like perfect. It's wild how good that movie is. It's not that expensive because Denis Villeneuve is a good filmmaker. I bet you the Ghostbusters Afterlife budget and with marketing and shit was comparatively almost as expensive and made, less than half as much money.
Yeah. I can't see it right on here, but I bet you I would agree with you.
I said it with confidence. I'm probably right.
I mean, the CGI with all the ghosts.
Yeah.
And now with Ghostbusters, this one you had a main character who was a ghost throughout a lot of the movie. So then you have that much more, whereas instead of just these quick shots of the ghost.
I think too, knowing a lot about like how James Gunn makes a movie and how Denis Villeneuve makes a movie compared to some other filmmakers, a big difference if you've got a VFX heavy movie is how much you've got planned in advance in your storyboarding. Because if you know exactly what you want it to look like and you've got the shots planned out in order, you can be a lot smarter about how you film it, which then makes it easier, thus cheaper and more efficient to finish your visual effects. Whereas if you're like, we're not really sure what this monster is going to look like, but there's a big monster coming at you, and you shoot that shit and then you send it to your VFX warehouse, that's harder to deal with.
Yeah. What was somebody was talking about an interview, and they had to, what movie was it? But they were talking about how, like, the director told them, like, you have to do this exactly, otherwise every time you screw up, this is like $100,000 that is added to the budget, because it was some sort of like fight with a CGI character.
Sure. And that kind of thing, imagine that, but also like, well, how tall is the character and what's he look like and whatever, and the answer is, I don't know. Well then, like, but that's unfortunately how like Marvel's taken a real beating these last couple years in terms of their quality, and a lot of it is they got too big too fast, and they started hiring good filmmakers like what's her name? Chloe
Oscar winner.
From the Eternals.
Yeah,
exactly. A good filmmaker who the Eternals has some, I think, really strong points, but ultimately obviously is bad.
Yeah.
But that's because likely this filmmaker said, hey, I don't know how to do this type of movie. That's not what I do. And they said, and I know this for a fact because this is what they do. I've read this and people have talked about it. They have said, don't worry about that part of it. You make the movie that you know how to make, and we have a team of the visual effects people. We got a whole production department and these, like, you know, the Kevins of the world and whatnot. They're going to handle that part of it, right? But not knowing the full picture in advance, how do you put that together in the end? Whereas somebody like James Gunn with the Guardians movies, he knows everything. He knows exactly how it wants to look. He storyboards it all out, and they film it in an order that makes sense with a completed story so that you're not saying, we're going to figure out what the big bad guy looks like later. You know the whole time. And I can't imagine working on a film knowing that we're spending hundreds of $millions on it and not even knowing what the end of the story is. Like, that's just bananas to me.
Yeah.
But they do it all the time.
They do. And actually, this is going back to a movie that we referenced already. But Scream 3 is a great example of a movie where at that point, that was supposed to kind of maybe be the end of the Scream franchise. That's the one where they're making Stab 3. So it's very meta.
Yes.
There's very meta.
I was trying to think, is that the Timothy Olyphant one? But I think that's Scream 2.
That's Scream 2, which is a great sequel. Scream 3, there's jokes in it about how the script's changing all the time because they're trying to keep top secret.
Well, Scream has always been referential of slasher movies.
Yeah.
That's its whole thing, is it's like self-referencing.
And so Scream 3, here we go. They're trying to, and they've got a bigger budget. It takes place in Hollywood. It's a whole thing. But the movie is not the best movie of the Scream franchise. It's pretty awful. I like it for this campiness. Parker Posey's great in it, but it's really crappy because they were like, let's do this, let's give you more money, but also we need it to be great. So they're making all these changes during it and like tweaking it, and it just doesn't work. If you know, in The Fall Guy, they talk about like, oh, that third act, like, it's not the strongest. We need to figure something out. I won't lie, the third act's not great.
The Fall Guy too. Really, it's funny that they show such a good example of the fucking problem with movies. Is the producer, what's her name? That wonderful actress
Hannah
from,
Waddingham.
Yeah, Hannah Waddingham plays this sleazy producer so perfectly, and they show you exactly the problem with most movies. Is you have a filmmaker and a crew and a cast who care so much about making a good product, and then you have a fucking gross producer who just cares about money and doing whatever. And it's actually hilarious that they managed to like put that in the movie.
Yeah.
And you got to imagine that David Leitch was like telling their actual producers, like, not you, we don't mean you, like not you, but other ones. Like, that's it's true. I don't think you're a big video game guy like me, but this is a huge problem in video games too. Like recently, like in February, Warner Brothers, under their video game umbrella, released Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. And this is from a publisher called Rocksteady, who made the previous Batman Arkham Asylum games, which were great single-player games from the last, 10, 12, 15 years, maybe the first one came out. There was 3 or 4 of them. And they were single-player games, and they were great. Awesome Batman games, wonderful campaigns, lots to do. You really felt like Batman. You got to beat up a bunch of thugs. You got to glide around the city. Sick. And then when it comes time for a new one from the same developer, everybody's excited. And they're like, this one is a games as a service, online thing, constant updates, you random drops and like all this shit. And it's just like, that's not what we want these games to be at all.
Yeah.
And you could just tell that this game was made by like producers who were like, the algorithm says that this is what makes the most money in games, and so we don't care what your game should be, and we don't care how you want to make a game. Make it these things. And that's how we say movies get made sometimes too, right? We're like, who is this for? Who wants this? But It's just like zeitgeist, and then you get a movie 6 months later that kind of misses the mark, right? Whereas what actually makes good movies and good games is passionate people doing what the image that they have in their head and bringing it to life in a way that they want to see it, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the business people that get in the way.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. It was, Greta Gerwig was saying Mattel was kind of hesitant about some of the jokes at Mattel in the Barbie movie. And she was like, look, people are going to make these jokes anyways. You can be in on it and it's going to be a lot better. And then they won't make the jokes, and it worked.
I have heard so much about Barbie discourse, both mostly good, some bad. You know, again, our profile pic, sunglasses, goatee gentleman being like, it's anti-man, but mostly good. But at no point did I hear anybody say fucking jack shit about Mattel. Nobody gives a fuck, Mattel. You're fine.
Yeah. Yeah, they're fine. They even the fact that they acknowledged that Ruth, the creator of Barbie, was like tax evasion or shit like that, like actual legal problems, and they're like threw that in. And they're like, that's true, that actually happened.
Oh, actually, a fun visual effects thing there. That car that what's her name? Ugly Betty. I can't remember the actress.
America Ferrera.
Yes, thank you. That car that she's driving is like completely CG.
Oh, really?
Because like it's obvious product placement.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this new Chevy or whatever it was, right? But I clocked it. I was like, product placement. Don't care. Whatever. Doesn't interrupt the flow of the movie. Totally fine. But later on, I found out like that they didn't actually have the car yet. They had like an agreement that it was going to be a deal. And so every time you see that car, it's apparently like fully CG.
Oh.
They did a great job. I wouldn't even thought twice about it. Yeah.
That's amazing. You know what I always love, speaking of cars and like these movies, is when it's like a post-apocalyptic thing and it's like the newest car and just like
you're like, that car wasn't even out when this apocalypse happened.
Yeah, you were saying that 5 years ago this happened, and now this vehicle is okay. Like The Walking Dead was really bad for that.
Well, yeah, they drove that Hyundai Tucson for like 4 seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty easy to like forgive a lot of like small stuff like that. It's just like, if it doesn't take away from the story, it's like dumb shit. It's like so hard to make these products that like I gotta give them a little bit of slack. But that is pretty funny. That Hyundai Tucson thing cracks me up too. And it was in like perfect condition.
Oh yeah. Like really? And you haven't even
some dirt. They rub some dirt on it. And they're like, zombie apocalypse. Let's go.
Yeah. It's good now. It's fine.
Another fun Barbie fact. I don't know if you know this, but like America Ferrera's husband, her character's husband, that's her actual husband.
Yeah.
And the whole bit about him like poorly learning Spanish is real. She told that story to Greta Gerwig, and Greta Gerwig was like, we gotta get this motherfucker in this movie. And that's very funny.
Yeah, like Barbie is such a great example of a fun summer blockbuster. Like they did such a great job with it.
Yeah, tremendous.
And that's what I want. I'm trying to think of what's coming out. Yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine, I think, will be, just judging off of what else is coming out this year, I think it will be the highest grossing film of the year.
I have high hopes for it because I hope that Kevin Feige of Marvel, like the boss, was
you're on a first name basis with him. I like it.
Yeah, we're buds. Was smart enough to be like, okay, Ryan, we have fucked up the last couple of years, and we need something big to help us, and we're going to trust you to do like some smart things. And I feel like what Ryan is going to do is dunk on Marvel.
Yeah.
Dunk on all the bad mistakes they've made. Much like, She-Hulk didn't get good results or whatever, but they fully dunked on Kevin in that. And some of the bad decisions that Marvel have made, it was a little bit self-referencing, and it was really good in that respect. Yeah. I thought that was its strongest point. And I hope they do more of that. But my biggest concern is clearly, no spoilers, like it's obvious that they're going to use this as some sort of a reset to the quote-unquote next stage of Marvel. And I have a lot of concerns about how that's going to go down, right?
Yeah, I'm so interested to see how this goes about, what happens, because it is fully MCU, and
yeah, because it will not technically. Like, so the last Deadpool movie was a Fox movie,
yeah,
and I believe it was released before Disney bought Fox.
Yeah, but so
technically this will be the first Marvel movie for Deadpool
and our first X-Men.
Sure, yeah.
And so, I'm very intrigued. I'm trying to avoid spoilers. It's tough because you just go
hard. There's shit leaking all over.
You go Instagram. You go over to the feed, and all of a sudden it's just spoilers. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I try to mute things where I can. I am on a movie release schedule because I was like, what is coming up? There's a Despicable Me 4 in July. My understanding is that those movies crush at the box office.
They
Again, I'm not
do fantastic.
they do well. There's a Quiet Place prequel. I'm not overly interested. You know, the first one was like good. The second one was like, you're not really giving me anything different here. And I feel like this one's just a cash grab, right?
Yeah.
Bad Boys 4, no thank you. Bad Boys 3, terrible. This one looks worse.
I bet you'll slap, though.
Are you a Costner fan? Because Horizon American Saga, huge Costner energy.
Which one's this one?
It's like he's making a new big Western
Oh,
saga.
right.
So it's going to be like 4 hours of slow cowboy shit.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, that's about how I feel about it. What's it next? Oh, Twisters. I think it'll be fun. I think
Twisters going to be fun. I like a good disaster film. I think when done just fun and right, it's good. I'm actually very afraid of tornadoes, but I love really Twister.
Interesting.
Oh yeah.
Twister, was good and holds up. So now here's one that I forgot about, but I'm excited to bring up because we talked about how I'm a video games guy. Borderlands, which is based on a video game series that I like, but has aged somewhat poorly because it's got a lot of like kind of frat bro humor, which like 15 years ago when the first game came out was a little better. But anyways, this movie looks like hot garbage, and has been delayed and reshot so many times that like this thing is going to be bad. Yeah. Mark my words. And it's coming out right in August. They got a prime spot, and they're going to bomb so hard.
And, like, okay, here's... When they're trying to just please everybody, it screws up, because I'm like, I love Cate Blanchett.
Oh, absolutely.
Is Cate Blanchett...
Also, Jamie Lee Curtis in this.
Jamie Lee Curtis. Like, fantastic. But are those the reasons why I would go see this movie? No.
No. Absolutely not. No. Like look, if you're a Borderlands fan, listeners of this podcast, one of the writers of the original series, Anthony Birch, don't go watch this movie. Go listen to Dungeons and Daddies, not a BDSM podcast, a podcast about Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, you've lost me.
He's the dungeon master there. That is a great podcast, great storytelling, wonderful characters and acting by his cast, his friends, and better, more appropriate humor than you're going to get out of this movie. It's going to be so bad. One more that I want to talk about, Alien Romulus. This one I'm actually hyped for because Fede Alvarez, the director, he made the Evil Dead remake from, not the most recent one, which was also fucking sick, by the way, but the one from like 2013.
Right.
And I'm a huge Evil Dead guy, and I was so hesitant about that remake, and I fucking love it. It's one of my favorite horror movies of all time. It's like up there. It's so good. And him making this Alien Romulus, I saw the little teaser that's out, and it looks like they're going like full horror, which makes sense for an Alien movie. It just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I'm psyched for that. I think that's going to be good.
I think if they can do it right and they do it full horror, like I really was super impressed by Prey, which was like the Predator like prequel.
Loved Prey.
So
Loved
good.
Prey.
This is what they need to do with these films if they want to keep these franchises going.
Take your existing IP, find somebody who's actually passionate about a good idea, and give it to them, and don't say like, well, how do we just like cash grab more money off of this, right? Like, yeah, Prey was sick. I hope we keep getting like, I just want like, okay, now Predator's fighting samurai, Predator versus pirates. Like, just give me that from filmmakers who are like really serious about it, and like, let's fucking go. I'll watch those all day long. The one other thing that I wanted to talk about, I don't think it's a summer thing. I think they've got it scheduled for the fall. The fucking Joker sequel. Fuck that. That movie sucks so bad. This movie looks so terrible. Fucking Todd Phillips is so far up his own ass. He made one depressing movie and he was like, I get it. I get what the people want. And it's the worst type of dudes online that are like, the Joker gets us. We identify with him. No, you're an incel. Fucking read a book.
I'm so glad you said it. I just did not care for the Joker. I just was like, who is this? Again, I'm like, what is this for? Like, I almost would have appreciated maybe more if it wasn't like in the DC or trying to be in the DC. Just be
he's like
be a standalone character.
Bad person. He's a bad character. He's not redeemable, but he's your hero. And at the end, people are like cheering for him because he's like a sad weirdo. And it's like, it's not. It's like, what am I trying to think?
And he encouraged everybody to go into chaos and like.
Let's compare it to a movie like Sling Blade, where you have quote unquote a sad weirdo who's done bad things, but has redeemable qualities and there's depth to the character and whatnot. And this one, there's no depth.
Yeah.
He's just an angry weirdo. And then by being angrier and more weird, people are like, we love this guy. We love what he's about. And like, I tell you what, the people on the internet that love that movie are by and far the worst type of person.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, you get Lady Gaga in the sequels if you're big, if you're a monster, good for you.
Like, I'm not. I saw the original Joker and I was just like, I don't get it. I think it's. Were we excited because it was a more down to earth superhero movie? Because it's not a superhero movie.
Here's the part of it that I really like and really do. I want to say I 100% appreciate is that DC was smart enough to say, instead of trying to jam all of our characters into an existing universe and Justice League the whole thing, we have a filmmaker who wants to do a story with one of our characters, and it doesn't have to be connected, and it can just be its own story. I like that. I want to see more of that, not only from DC, but also from Marvel. I think it would be fine, because now, like, when's the last time Marvel did anything that wasn't connected? Even the Netflix stuff, they're now retconning.
Yeah.
Like, they're working on a new Daredevil series that's going to tie it in, right? The new Echo series, I think, technically kind of tied it in, right? And it's okay to just be like, this is a one-off. Don't worry about it. And I like that they did that, but I just hated the result. Yeah. Absolutely hated it.
Yeah, and, like, I actually enjoyed Echo, and what I thought was great about it was that... and that's such a Netflix thing too, but she's just a normal person. She's just a fucking badass. Like,
yeah, she's pretty sick. Yeah, you know what? I actually it was an MCU series, but the Echo series. At one point, Kingpin gives her some sort of really high tech device that visually shows her the ASL digital hand signals. And I'm obviously am not a member of the hearing impaired community, so maybe I if somebody corrects me, fine. Wouldn't it have made more sense if it was going to visually show her to just show the words, or is it like somehow better to show her fake little digital hands?
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I didn't even think about that, but you're right.
Like, also, I don't know enough about it. Maybe it's quicker and easier to understand ASL as opposed to read, because I don't I don't understand ASL, so. Maybe that is actually the right choice, but I did think it was weird. But yeah, that series was good. Definitely not near the bottom of the the MCU series has put out a bunch of stuff, but it's saturated. They've saturated. Loki season 2 was good.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens next with Loki. I know we're not done with him. Like,
I think it's going to be a Vision situation where it's like we forgot about it for like 4 fucking years.
Yeah.
Remember that? Remember White Vision?
Yeah.
He just kind of floated off. He's out there. He's doing shit.
They've announced he's coming back, but that's not till like 2026 because Bob Iger's like
he's going to have so many stories to tell.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's tough with the MCU. I enjoy just being able to, read the next chapter, get the next thing part of it. And I love this interconnectedness. I just think that they've not been on their A game since Endgame. And I think the problem is that, because I would have no problem something new Marvel every single month. Soap operas do this. Yeah. Soap operas have 5 new episodes a week.
People say, "Oh, it's just they're putting out too much. It's saturated." That's not the problem. The quality is the problem.
Yeah.
If you're putting out something every month that rips, great. Why would anybody complain? But the problem is you're putting out stuff that is bad, and you're putting out bad stuff because you're not putting enough time and effort into it. And Marvel specifically, there's been some lawsuits and some union talk from like their VFX crew. That's the biggest issue, is they are slamming their VFX people and not giving them time and effort to do things.
Yeah.
And when you're doing such VFX heavy movies and shows, that really, really hurts you. It shows, you can see it, and it kind of sucks, right?
Well, and that's kind of, I think, Echo had the visual effects was just
minimal.
The sign language, like.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's probably like quote unquote hidden visual effects with like some green screen backgrounds or some explosions and stuff like that. But given the state of things these days, easy to say that it was minimal.
Yeah.
As compared to something like that last Marvel's movie, which overall I kind of liked. It was pretty fun. I think Kamala Khan really carried the whole thing for me. But there was a couple of scenes with maybe the worst VFX I've ever seen in a Marvel movie, where I'm like, this is just, you're Disney. You have more money than most countries. This is just you not planning ahead and rushing and not giving artists the time they need to do the work. And that to me is unforgivable.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with you there. The Marvels I thought was really fun, and just I enjoyed that we immediately got right into it. And it's like one of the shortest Marvel movies because like we know these characters at this point.
Yeah.
Get in, get out. Like that's the biggest problem is when we're making these like 2.5-hour movies. We're like, I know who this person is at this point.
I don't begrudge a movie for its length, because if it's a good movie, you don't think about the length.
Yeah.
Like when I got out of Furiosa, which I think is 2.5 hours, I didn't even realize that I'd been in it. Like that movie was just like nonstop. Let's go. I hadn't even thought about it. So it's bad things that take too long that are the problem.
Yes, 100%. As we start to wrap up, I wanted to know what are you drinking?
Well, I did have it was Sunday afternoon here where I am, and I said, well, I'm gonna have a couple drinks with my buddy Craig, and I said, what do I have in my closet? Not a lot. So I found a White Claw Surge.
Oh.
So that was drink number one, was a black cherry White Claw Surge. It was not good. But then my second drink was from local Parkside Brewery, Bertha's Raspberry Lime Ale, and this is a good one. I like Parkside. I go there quite a bit. It's out in Port Moody. Great patio. You look out onto the inlet and up at some mountains. Living the life.
Yeah, that's awesome.
My favorite place to go to drink beers. So whenever you come out here to visit, finally, that's where we'll go.
I know. I need to visit out there. I just had some friends go out to BC, and I was like, I do want to go. I used to live in Victoria, so BC is always a special place in my heart. But
pull out couch now, buddy. We upgraded. So
nice.
Let me know.
Nice. I will do that.
I also have cats that wake up at like 4 a.m. for breakfast, so prepare yourself.
Okay, that's fine. I'm drinking. I decided to do some rum and Coke, actually.
Rum and Coke, classic. I used to be a rum and Coke guy, and then one time somebody bet me that I couldn't drink a Texas Mickey to myself in a weekend, and I do not drink rum anymore because of that event.
It
was a much younger Ryan that attempted that, but it was bad. It was bad. It got real bad.
That's fair. I'm trying to think. I was talking with friends the other day, and they were all like, everybody's got that one thing that they got too drunk off of and they can never do it again. For a while, because one of the first things I got drunk off of was Smirnoff Ice.
Oh, yeah.
So that was not a fan for a while.
I think the worst problem with it, your Smirnoff Ices, your growers, your other coolers, they're so sugary. So as a young person, you gravitate towards them because you're like, ooh, I like this. This tastes like Kool-Aid. But the sugar makes you feel so much worse.
Yeah. So
much worse that as an adult, I can't drink a sugary drink like that. Like, I can't do it. It's just like churns my stomach immediately.
Yeah, and I like to ice some friends.
It's funny. It's still funny.
It's
honestly,
great.
It's been a while since I've been iced. It's still funny.
It sucks when I get iced, though, and I'm like, why are you doing this to me? And they're like, because every Christmas party, I always have a bunch of ice, and I just go around doing that. It's great. It's super fun. Okay, final question I always like to ask the guests. What's awesome?
What's awesome? Oh, boy. Yeah, bikes. I like bikes. We moved out here to Burnaby a couple years ago from Edmonton. Edmonton hates bicycles, hates biking around. A lot easier to bike out here. Good bike routes. Next weekend, my beautiful wife Charlotte and I have signed up for a Thondo. Fondo, which is like an Italian word for like a bike race type of thing.
Okay.
and so she's like a real cyclist. So she's doing 120 kilometers on her road bike.
Shit.
Yeah, no big deal. She does that shit all the time. She's a bit of a masochist. But lucky me, they also have the Medio Fondo, which is only 50K, and they'll allow anybody and any bike. So me and my e-bike signed up. So I'm going to do a casual, electronically propelled 50K and then sit and get drunk in the beer gardens at the finish line and wait for her to finish her 120K. But it's out north of Langley out here, so if anybody knows the area, you're going to go along the kind of Fraser, you're going to have some beautiful views of some of the mountains and the hills. Like, I'm looking forward to it. It's such a beautiful area, and it's just nice to get out and bike around. And you know what, Calgary? I know they're trying hard. So if you're not a cyclist in Calgary, think about it. I'm a big proponent of e-bikes in general. We barely use our car out here. I try not to use my car at all. I would recommend, if you're a person who doesn't bike, but you're trying to think about getting into biking and you like really want to make a go of it, spend the money, get an e-bike. You can get a decent sort of introductory e-bike for a couple $1,000s, which I realize is a privileged thing to say that as an introductory thing. That might not be reasonable for a lot of people, and I totally understand that. But if it's possible, and even if it's a stretch of your budget, getting that e-bike will make it so that you want to bike, because the barrier to biking for a lot of people is like, well, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
What if I get out there and I'm so far away from my house and then I don't want to fucking do it anymore? And it makes you not want to go and start it. With the e-bike, and this was me, 4 years ago, I didn't bike at all. Charlotte biked all the time. I never biked anywhere. I got an e-bike. I loved it so much. I put so many kilometers on it. Then when we moved out here, I got a second, better e-bike. And in 2 years, I've got 1,500 kilometers on my e-bike.
Wow.
Because the thing is even if you're like, I don't really want to bike, you're like, fuck it, I'll just go. And if I don't feel like it, I'll make the bike do all the work. But if, inevitably, you end up doing more work than, of course, if you didn't go at all, right? And even, it's not about exercise. It's just you're out, you're not in a car, you're enjoying the fresh air, you're getting around, you're not causing more congestion and more pollution. Just overall, 100%, bikes are awesome.
Bikes are awesome. I have a bike. I need to go get it all tuned up and everything, but it's so much fun. And, it can be at times like, I don't know. And then as soon as you go and you just start going along the bike paths, and Calgary does have some great bike paths here.
Nice bike paths, yeah.
You just you're just fun and it's into it. It's great.
For the new people, just get a little high, not dangerously high, a little high, and then just bike a nice, easy bike path and just zone out, listen to nature, look at what's around you, cruise along at a nice, even pace. You're going to have a great time. Trust me.
Yes, it's 100%. It's great. I highly recommend. This episode brought to you by bikes.
Yeah, 100%. Bikes, TM.
All right, as we start to go, Tuck might be coming on my podcast. We'll see if that actually happens. Do you have any messages for Tuck?
He's a coward. He's not going to make the time. He's too busy being a dad to podcast. He's dead to me. Actually, Craig, can I let you on a little secret?
Yeah.
We recorded an episode of Tuck and Rolls last night. We're going to probably put it out this week. So that's a nice little treat for you.
That's
what a nice
exciting.
little treat for you.
Nice little treat.
No, love that guy. He's the best. He's a busy guy. I don't have children. He's got 2 of them, and they're all in like sports and shit. So he's busy all the time. So we do the podcast when we can, and we try to have fun when we do it. But I want to say, if we can find a time for all 3 of us, I'm happy to come back whenever. I love talking to you. I had so much fun. For the listeners, last time I saw Craig, I was in Calgary. Lucky me, in Calgary, got to do bingo. But I was there for a funeral. So I was not having a good time, but it was such a pleasure to see Craig. And Craig, you made my day, and you made that kind of bad weekend that I had to have a lot better just having to see you before it. So thanks for that. That was a great time. And thanks for having me on the podcast today. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate that. That was a lot of fun. It was great to see you host bingo. You get to play bingo. Didn't win. Yeah. Sorry. I try to rig it, but I'm not very good at it. But it was a lot of fun. I adore you. You're fantastic. I'm so glad I could get you on my pod.
Anytime.
Maybe because I brought you on my pod, and Topher's never brought you on his podcast because he doesn't have one. But
I was going to say, Topher has a fucking podcast? Yeah. What the fuck? No, he doesn't have one. Okay,
he doesn't have one. So maybe I can be a little bit better than Topher.
Okay, we've moved up the rank.
Yes.
You're above.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just don't meet any of my other siblings.
I was going to say, I'm like, I think you have other siblings, but I don't know them, so they can go to hell.
Yeah, perfect. That's all I asked for.
Good enough. Works for me.
All right. Well, thank you, Ryan, for being here today. Thanks for chatting movies. Thanks for chatting everything. This was
Pleasure.
a tangent-filled day.
No, it went exactly as I planned.
Yeah, perfect. That's
I
all.
covered all. I had a checklist. I covered all my things.
Perfect. Well, thank you all for passing time with me. We'll chat soon. Follow me on social media, Passing Time with Craig on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll chat soon. Bye.